Kiran Fothergill is is the Northeast Chair of the Jobs Foundation, and he is extremely concerned about opportunities for young people. Now, Kiran, look, I think what we are doing is pretty disgraceful. You've heard my view. What do you say?
Well, thank you very much. That was extremely interesting. I would agree, tend to agree from my experience in business. I lead an engineering group based in the northeast of England, in one of the most deprived parts of our country, Stockton-on-Tees. We've been headquartered there for 171 years on the same spot. It's a national business, but we're very true to our roots. And in a ward where we've got up to 50% youth unemployment, we've got vacancies that we can't fill. And how does that work? Well, there's obviously a misfiring here in the system, a disconnect between employers who are looking to employ young people because they need young people in their businesses, and the system that doesn't give those young people the opportunities to take up that kind of employment.
So let me ask a really simple question. So obviously you advertise for a job. Is it that these young people are not applying, or is it that when they apply they've not got the skills you need?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that attitude is the most important thing when you're looking at a young person. It's not necessarily that the curriculum has set them up in the perfect way. Things are moving so fast. We can talk about AI, we can talk about all these types of things, but attitude remains really important. But when the young people come to the interview, often we find that sometimes they don't turn up on time. If they come from generational unemployment, there's no culture of work in their family. They don't know what it means to turn up on time, to respond to an email in a timely manner, to dress appropriately. I mean, these are obstacles that can be overcome, but they cost time and money to the business. And at that point, certainly when minimum wage has gone up, why wouldn't you hire someone with 10 years experience? Why would you give a young person the opportunity?
And by the way, sorry to cut across you. I'm not an employer, but people have said to me that the really shocking thing is that instead of raising standards and responding to things like this, schools have actually just dropped requirements. So as an example, you know, there has been an explosion, and I'm sorry if I'm going to dispel a myth here, there's been an explosion of working class kids going to Oxford and Cambridge. The reason is not that schools have educated them better. The reason is that now Oxford and Cambridge take into account both your A-levels and the postcode of the school that you went to. And so, in fact, instead of driving up standards, we're just dropping them to get into training, dropping them to get into universities.
Well, I would agree. I mean, this is positive discrimination is what they call it, with which brings everyone down to the same level, unfortunately, and is not, in my view, something that's particularly progressive. And you made a comment earlier about the white van driver. What I would say, from what I see, it's a far more profitable career path to have a skilled trade, to go out in a white van and work long and hard days, than it is to go to university and earn an undergraduate degree. I think, as you put it.
What happens if I'm in Stockton-on-Tees, right? Mum, dad, and grandparents have never worked, and that is not just their fault. That's also the fault of public policy. But okay, the school you went to was crap. You don't really know how to do anything. You've got your 5 GCSEs maybe, but who cares? You know, how on earth does that person then say to themselves, if I get a job, I will earn less than if I'm on benefits? I mean, how are you going to motivate yourself to do that? Now, you know, and I know, that if you're in a job actually in the fullness of time, you'll probably be better off. But I mean, in the immediate sense, you're not. And I just wonder how on earth I'm going to persuade some kid from Stockton-on-Tees not just to go on benefits like mum and dad.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. This is a totally underappreciated part of this problem. We incentivize the welfare system, the welfare state. I mean, even the job centre, I would say, is totally wrongly incentivized to try and get people into work. I mean, it's more to facilitate a box ticking exercise so that people can stay on their social welfare payments, because all the job centre is doing is making sure that they do enough by the book to stay on the system they're on. So no, how do you motivate them? Well, as an employer, we try and get out to colleges, we try and get out to sixth form places. We've got dozens of apprentices, and we try and show them the career paths. We've got a guy on our board who's been with us 25 years. He started as an apprentice on the tools. So there are the pathways there. And I think increasingly, as Elon Musk said only the other day, you want to be in an industry where you're moving atoms physically with your hands, because everything else it might go down the drain. So in our industry, which is lifts and escalators, we can show young people that these are careers that are here to last still, and that they can better themselves, be autonomous, and earn a lot of money.
I've always look, I'm going to say something that may well outrage people. I've done it before, but I believe that the reason we teach French in schools is because we need to do something with French graduates from university. So I can tell you, I lived in Belgium. You don't need to learn French. It's a complete waste of time. The only reason you would need to learn French is if you want to be a French teacher. Now, that might be me deliberately stirring the pot, but there is a serious point behind it. I worry that the subjects we're teaching in schools are being taught just because that's what we do, rather than actually thinking about what would be useful for the country. So, I mean, let's just be clear that the likelihood of you learning French and that being useful economically to you in the future is very low. But that's not the only example. Personal social education, all this rubbish, is highly unlikely to benefit you as well. Now, look, you are somebody who literally needs engineers. I mean, does the education system actually give you anything at all, or is it just a waste of time?
I mean, to be totally honest with you, an MBQ3 isn't worth the paper it's written on. Someone else can do it for you. There's no timed examination component of this exam. It's useless, to be honest with you. And what we find is that you get guys who've got these qualifications, MBQ3, MBQ4s maybe slightly better, who can't really do the job that they're applying to do with this qualification. And they're mercenaries in the industry because there are so few of them. They can command fairly high wages. And then that puts the whole business wage structure under a lot of pressure, because you've got old timers who've been in the business, in the industry 20, 25 years, basically on the same wage as these young guys who don't know what they're doing.
We've got a remarkable situation in this industry. And by the way, I don't blame young people for any of this. But, if the British media industry sacked every single person that could enjoy professional training from media studies, do you know, in 1 year we would fill every single job? That means that in every single year, the universities graduate enough people to restock the entire industry in full. What that means is, if you study media studies at university, it's highly unlikely that you will ever work in that field. And so we're churning these people out, and whether they're good or bad is kind of irrelevant. There is no prospect of the majority of them ever getting a job in that field, and therefore, in a sense, you're wasting everybody's time. Now, if you went to university for a bit of fun, that's fine. But, most people are not millionaires, right? And so they're going to end up being hoodwinked into going to these courses when the universities themselves know they'll never get a job out of it.
Well, and you come out with 50 grand's worth of debt that you never pay back, that the state has to bear ultimately.
Do you want fries with that?
We take it into our own hands. That's why we put on our own bespoke apprenticeship courses and programs where we invest in the young person and show them we train them up appropriately. We partner them up.
But there's a slight problem with that. You're also paying tax for the government version of that you're not being provided with.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, and now it's costing about £4,000 more than it was per young person per NEET to hire. I mean, one of the things that I advocate for as chairman of the Jobs Foundation North East is a skills relief tax, pretty simple, to offset training costs and NI exemptions for first jobbers when you're in the first 2 years, for example, when you're hiring people out of long-term unemployment as well. Then employers should be exempt from these taxes, I think, and that would help bring a lot of people who are a long way from getting back into the workplace more efficiently and more easily. We've actually put that to Rachel Reeves. You won't be surprised that we haven't had much back.
Well, you never get much back from her. I mean, you could have a more interesting conversation with my lunch. But let me just ask you this question. And, I don't want to pry too far or go too far in the interview because you've come here to talk about jobs. But if you are an engineering company, why haven't you just outsourced to China? What is the argument for actually, wading through the mud of British regulations to stay here? Why are we worth investing in as a country?
It's family. It's a family business first and foremost, and we are so deeply rooted in our community. Our decision making horizons are really long term, and we are committed entirely to the place that we're from, and we have a community of people and employees and families that have been with us through thick and thin. We're not going to abandon them.
But with respect, and what you've said is laudable. With respect, that is the sort of answer that people give who are eventually eliminated by competition that undercuts them from abroad. And I'm not saying that will happen in your case, but my point is, what you've cited is very laudable, but you haven't actually cited a reason to invest in the United Kingdom. You've just said that you're a loyal guy.
No, that's a very fair point. No, what we have done in the last 15 years is totally transform the business. So the business needs to stay relevant, needs to be profitable, needs to be relevant to its customers and to the marketplace. So what we've done, from being a product-led business with a service support element, we flipped that on its head. So the margin, the money, the profit is in servicing. That's where we've focused. And with the product side of the business is to support the service bit. So that used to be the other way around. Since we made that swap, which is about 15 years ago, the business has doubled in size, which tells you everything you need to know about, one, the decline of British manufacturing, but two, the importance over a 170-year business to keep reinventing yourself.
I'll tell you what's really interesting. Because I used to live in Ascot, I'm a member of the Royal Enclosure at Ascot. Now, as you can imagine, a scrag like me wouldn't normally get in, but I happen to know people through a local connection that got me nominated for it. Here's the really interesting, that's not me showing off, it's just really interesting. The Royal Enclosure office at Ascot is unlike any business I've ever been in touch with, and it's this. There's a phone number and somebody answers and says, hello, Royal Enclosure Office. And you go, oh, I've got a bit of a problem with my badge. And they go, I'll just pop you on hold. And you can't hear this, but you can tell they're going, Steve, how do we fix this? And my point is, you are actually phoning the actual office with the actual management picking up the phones. And it's like night and day. You know, when you phone a bank and you've got this automated this, and you know the bloke in Bangalore can't actually fix your problem because the computer won't let him. Whereas actually, when you phone up a business, and I know it's a not-for-profit, but when you phone up a business where you're actually speaking to somebody who gives a toss and is able to do something to resolve your problem, it's just... You heave a sigh of relief because you know you're not going to sit there for 3 hours and then just fail anyway.
Well, can I just comment on that? I mean, that you've hit the nail on the head there. Where we compete and we win against the multinationals, the guys you'd have heard of, Otis, Thyssen, Coney, Schindler, the really big boys, where we compete and win is on customer service.
Yeah.
We answer the phone. We deliver from a regional hub model. So we've got 15 offices around the UK, 450 plus employees in our main lift group. And we turn up on time. It's basic customer service where we focus on customer needs, and that's where we beat those other guys.
I'll tell you what's extraordinary in modern corporate Britain. And I've got to be careful because don't worry, they're not watching. But what's amazing to me is that we are constantly, businesses, I'm not talking about this one, businesses are constantly driving down costs and saying, oh, we must cut this, we need one receptionist rather than two. And the person saying that is on 200 grand a year having 3-hour steak lunches, right? And you think, why don't we kick that fatty out first rather than getting rid of security people? And actually, time and time again, what we have seen is a reduction in people who are actually serving customers and engorgement of legal affairs officers, HR officers. I mean, diversity training days, they don't let me go on them because I'd actually turn up. But you know, we got all these, oh God, oh, you know, here's our strategy on this and here's our policy on that. I'd never read any of them, right? But you think there's now, well, the City of London has floors and floors and floors of these people and they can't answer the bloody phone.
Well, let's be honest. Let's hope that AI kills off a lot of that nonsense and a lot of those consultants that actually provide no economic value to the economy. I totally agree.
I'll tell you what annoys me about consultants. If you are a company that is centralised, they'll say decentralise. And if you're decentralised, they'll say centralise. I had a friend who worked at one of the big consulting companies and he made 200 grand a year doing that. Just telling them to do the opposite of what they were doing.
It goes around in cycles. I mean, we deal with that.
How do you, just a matter of interest, in a family business, how do you ensure that you stay relevant generation after generation?
Yeah, there's no sort of magic answer to that. It's managing the relationships within the business, staying ahead of the game, having the helicopter view, looking down the road, and that's the role of the family members, because we've got professional people in the business, of course, but that's the role of the shareholders of the family.
I've noticed this. I've never been involved in a family business, but it seems to me that quite often in a family business there are other hereditary positions. That is to say that the chief engineer is the son of the chief engineer, and it's not just the owner's family that's a kind of hereditary thing.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing. I mean, we've got many examples of brothers and fathers and sons and aunts and uncles and all the rest of it working at the firm across different parts of the business. And that's a good thing, sure, on the one hand, but on the other hand, you've got to mind that culturally a little bit as well and make sure that it works and that people aren't, it's got to be managed correctly. But when managed correctly, it's incredibly powerful.
I've got one final question for you. I mean, I'm listening to everything you're saying, and you know what? I think most people watching and listening is going to say that is the sort of businesses we need in Britain. The reality is you are not the majority. So what do you say to me if I say to you, that's all great, but nobody's doing it other than you?
I say people are, they definitely are. The backbone of the UK economy continues to be, I mean, despite the fact that we're hammered left, right and centre, there continues to be businesses like ours, people that go about their business quietly, treat their employees well, serve their customers well, are at the heart of their communities up and down the country, not just in the big cities. And I think I'm positive about that. I just think we need to have a unified voice, and that's what I'm trying to do, so that we can fight back at some of this extraordinarily damaging legislation that's being thrown out.
I've got to be honest with you. I think, you know, people taking pride in their business, people having a commitment to the economy and a commitment to their own people is so much better than this downsizing and outsourcing. Nothing good has come from any of that rubbish at all, apart from the consultants buying 5-bedroom houses in Berkshire, which makes it additionally irritating. OK, thank you so much. That is Kiran Fothergill. He is the North East Chair of the Jobs Foundation.